back again with another goodie. I am so excited to give you this wonderful woman and tell you all about the great work that she's doing. So I'm going to stop talking and actually tell people who you are.
Hey everybody, I'm Allison Hayes, and I write, I've been running a blog called Thriving While Disabled for the last several years, and I'm now bringing it out in the form of a book. The book is going to be Thriving While Disabled: Navigating Disability Finances, and I'm so excited to bring it out. So, a little bit of backstory on me. Like I said, my name's Allison Hayes. I've been living with functional neurological disorder for the last about 20 odd years. And I've actually been identified as disabled since about the age of 3 when I was diagnosed with a gross motor disability that I was able to do enough physical therapy and work to get it down to a fine motor issue. But still dealing with that. Basically, it just translates into my handwriting is a little extra messy and things like that. Working around it all my life. And I'm all about facing problems and finding solutions. And that's what my blog follows. And that's really what the book's about too. So I'm very excited.
Me as well. And I called you Ashley. I'm sorry. Your name is Allison. I apologize. Um, so yes. So tell me and others, what
Mm-hmm.
does what does thriving while disabled mean to you?
All right. So everyone has to survive, has to figure out a way to survive somehow. But I firmly believe that even though societal messaging tends to be that with disabled people, we're lucky to survive, I think we totally deserve to thrive and can find our ways to do so despite the messaging and the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And again, a lot of messaging and challenges, it's more what society says or expects about us than what our own limitations actually are.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, thriving is being able to find happiness
Mm-hmm.
where you choose to look. Thriving is about feeling like you at least have
Mm-hmm.
enough food, enough medicine, enough support that you're okay and you have hope for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it's about finding the abundance, no matter where it might be, and figuring out how to build a better life for yourself, no matter what struggles you're facing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about success, but not necessarily society's standard definitions of success.
I mean, at 100%, because that's actually my word of the year, abundance. And basically, have to you have to redefine what that means
Mhm.
for you. And even like this past week alone, it's been a very chronically ill week. It's like I've been in the
Mhm.
throes of in the trenches. You know, and it's like so.
Oh,
And when you get to that place, you can't help but think about before. Like I've never had to deal with this.
mhm.
I wish I could do this and do that. That's just part of the process. That's what happens.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, that's grief. That's grief, that's loss, and that's absolutely normal. And if you don't go through some kind of grieving process, what did you lose?
Exactly.
Because, like, really, what grief is it's an expression of love.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, like, that's part of this whole thing. Grief is an expression of love.
Yeah. And
It's
for most of us, before we became chronically ill, on some level, we were content. We loved the state that we were in. You had
yep.
freedom. You could go out. You could stay in. You could drink. You could not. I mean, you could do whatever you really wanted to, and
Mhm.
things just worked out. But then, you know, so you can't. Well, I mean, you could do that with chronic illness. I wouldn't advise it, but
No,
but I mean, you can do whatever you want, but
the
things
prices are higher.
very much.
Yes.
So that redefinition and
Hmm.
figuring out with your limitations, with your struggles, where is your contentment line? And it's
Oh, mm,
it's not going to be where it was. Like you just it's not.
no,
But
no,
it doesn't mean you can't still get that.
exactly. And then that ability to re readjust what you're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to redefine things and to be able to look at things from a different angle, that is such an essential coping skill and such an essential tool for being able to accept and move on, because there's nothing wrong with grieving, but being stuck in a place of grief and loss and not allowing yourself to move forward, now that's a problem.
Yes. And that's going to be it's an additional problem on top of
Right.
the depression and anxiety you probably already have inherently from whatever your condition is. Then
Right.
that fact that you're not allowing yourself to grieve and let go of what was to
Right.
and it's a scary feeling. Like there's a point I described it as like that feeling of falling, like when you're on a rope swing, and that
Mm.
point when you let go and you were literally just out there before you actually
Mm.
fall and hit something. It's like you just woo,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah.
scariest thing in the world. But you gotta do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so with the book, I'm trying to make it all a little less scary and have people have a better idea of what they're throwing themselves into
Mm-hmm.
and how to figure out those next steps, because there's a lot of unknowns,
Mm-hmm.
and becoming disabled is something people do not like to think about and generally refuse to consider until they're deep, deep in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the reason I'm saying deep in there rather than until it happens is because we tend to be in a long term state of denial.
Oh, right.
And people, oh, yeah, no, I'm not
It
disabled.
like it is real. Like I mean, I know
But
because I can still hear my manager because I had just met like just reached like my non-clinical ill success pastry chef, great little seafood restaurant, and I'm in the I'm talking about the first couple of months of you
mm,
have things inside of you that are trying to kill you actively, and here I am not released from the doctor yet, still going back to my manager trying to get on the schedule. And and he's
yeah,
like he finally had to say, "Do not come back unless you have the paper. Like you're not gonna get in my kitchen and pass out again, because that's how mine start. I'm in there trying to work, and I passed out at his feet, girl. Just so
yeah.
he like you not gonna come in my kitchen and mess up my insurance rating, no ma'am. So I mean, yeah, it
Oh, yeah.
because people they when you're in school, we play doctor, we play house, like they have home ec, they teach all these things. No one says anything about the possible maybe sometime you could become disabled. What then?
No, absolutely not. And, even in like day to day conversations,
Or
you talk about avoiding the risk, but you don't talk about what happens
if you can't.
if you do. Yeah, if you can't avoid the risks or if you can't manage it. And I think it all goes back to a fear of death.
Yeah.
If you acknowledge disability, that's one step closer to ending.
Yep.
It's and becoming disabled is a form of ending. You end your abled life and have to go in this new journey in a relatively uncharted land that nobody wants to talk about.
So with that,
And
like on that
yeah,
same vein,
yep.
what what challenges did you initially encounter that
Mm-hmm.
made you realize that well, as far as things that you encountered navigating the healthcare system specifically, what did you encounter that made you realize, you know what, other people need to hear this too?
Okay, so My book talks a bit about the healthcare system, but is really focused on like large scale things. But I would say for me, one of them was very simply, it took seeing 4 different neurologists and 3 different psychiatrists to get a diagnosis for the condition I have, which is functional neurological disorder. At the time when I was diagnosed, it was called conversion disorder, which can trace its roots directly back to hysteria. So I still deal with people telling me that the condition I have does not exist because it's the result of sexism. Mm-hmm. And because the history of the condition goes back to ideas of wombs wandering around, because that's what hysteria means, wandering womb, that what I have and am living with isn't real. Mm-hmm. That's actually part of why they did the name change, because it was dealing with so much stigma. So when I was diagnosed, most neurologists had heard conversion disorder mentioned once or twice their entire time in medical school. Mm-hmm. And it was referred to as a psychiatric condition where patients have neurological symptoms, which is really not helpful for anything.
It's the opposite.
It's like, right. It's now recognized as a neurological condition, hence why they're calling it functional neurological disorder. And basically, people with this condition have neurological symptoms, and a good percentage of us can see a direct relationship between stress and having these symptoms occur. Mm-hmm. My case, it mostly expresses as like muscle movements, but it also impacts my bladder. It also impacts like my sometimes finding words and things like that. But the other thing that occurs frequently is I get sensory symptoms. My brain's decided a muscle in my leg doesn't exist, and I'll have like sensations of absence places. Like my brain's just like, oh, this little section of your back, it's not there. Have fun. Things like that. So I was having these really weird, very visible, very obvious symptoms. Like my body's rocking back and forth. My arms are splaying all over the place. My legs are collapsing out from under me. And I had one neurologist say, oh, it's stress, which is so useful. She also diagnosed me with anxiety. And the symptoms came out because it was in a stressful point in my life. I was in,
some stress. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I had some stress. So there was stress going on in my life, and I had this weird stuff going on, which didn't help anything. And I basically ended up going into remission because my biggest stressor I escaped from. And 2 years later, I had a relapse. Mm-hmm. And that was when I went through all of these different doctors, every one of which didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And I saw a neurologist who specialized in seizures. And he's like, well, I don't think it's seizures. I'm like, okay. You have any suggestions?
Right.
And he's like, well, let's do a few tests in the hospital to see if it's seizures. Cool, thanks. So a colleague of his came by and was like, this might be a movement disorder. I'm like, oh, really? My movements are disordered. Okay. And she finally sent me to a neurologist who was able to look at it and basically go, yes, it's a movement disorder, but it doesn't fit any of the major categories of movement disorder.
Well, why would it? Like, of course.
Right.
Why would you do that?
Right. Why would it be normal? No. And then he actually knew what conversion disorder was and was able to say, I think that's what this is. But at the time, neurologists weren't allowed to make the diagnosis. They had to also send you to a psychiatrist to confirm the diagnosis. So that's what he did. And so I finally, you know, 2.5 years after my first symptoms, was correctly diagnosed with, at the time, conversion disorder, now known as functional neurological disorder. Um, and my other diagnoses weren't as difficult. I also have depression, anxiety, migraines, and like I mentioned, I had the fine motor disability. But like, yeah, the medical system, they didn't do a great job of diagnosing me. They didn't do a great job of treating me. I went through a bunch of misdiagnosis struggles. And so I do write a lot in the blog, and honestly, it's a topic for another book, the self-care within handling the medical care system. But yeah, that's
So, like,
tough,
I
tough.
know a lot of, like, even in that process that you went through, so many people with chronic illnesses, regardless of the diagnosis, struggle to advocate for themselves, in
Oh
those,
yeah.
because you have all these people who are supposed to be, and who are, I guess, the professionals, but yet they seemingly have no clue. So,
Mm-hmm.
what are some key steps that you can advise that they can take to help them feel more empowered and in charge of their care?
Okay, so the first, I'd say, most important thing is, look at it this way: you and your doctor are supposed to be equal partners in your diagnosis process.
Mm-hmm.
You are the expert in what's going
Thank you.
on
Someone
in
said it.
your body.
Yes.
You are the expert in what is wrong. You are the expert in what is happening. Only you know what you're experiencing. Only you know, or have the possibility of really knowing what's triggering your symptoms. Only you know what happened right before and after your
Right.
symptoms happened. So you are the expert in how your body is misbehaving.
Mm-hmm.
Your doctor is supposed to be the expert in how human bodies go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to have you and the doctor compare notes and find the condition or conditions that match up between how your body is going wrong and how human bodies go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime your doctor isn't listening to you or seems to be missing the point, it is your job as an advocate to remind them of why you're there, or why what they're saying doesn't align with your reality, and
Mm-hmm.
so on. And so that's really important. Also, especially if you have an unusual condition, yeah, doctors will say, I have medical I have a medical degree. Don't confuse your Googling with my medical degree. Well, the comeback to that is, okay, but also don't confuse the 10 minutes you had of teaching on the topic of my condition with my however many years of lived experience with it.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to be subject matter experts on the conditions we have.
Mm-hmm.
And if we spend a long time looking for a diagnosis, we become experts on many of the conditions that our condition resembles to.
Mm-hmm.
So don't deny yourself the credit for that.
Right.
So, like, I think that's one of the most important pieces in that. You're the expert on your body, your experiences, your life. And yeah, you might need to translate it a little bit into something the doctor can understand.
Mm-hmm.
But a good doctor will work with you to do that.
Right.
And a good doctor will view you as a colleague in this sense.
Mm-hmm.
They are the experts in how bodies go wrong. Absolutely. But
Mm-hmm.
only you know what your body is doing.
Exactly. And I think also
Mm.
that doctors, I think just because of the nature of their job and the sheer number of people that they see, they just tend to lump us all, or a group of patients, into a huge category. If any one person has a similar symptom to another person, may not be exact, but they have had it, then whoop, you're over there. And so when they walk in, they don't see you. They see
They
all the other people.
right, and like there's a saying, because like apparently a lot of times when people are early in their training, they've learned about all of these different weird conditions, so they're looking for them.
Right.
And so there's like this, and you hear hoof prints, think horse,
Mm-hmm.
not zebra.
Right.
The problem is sometimes they get a zebra. And they've got a very limited definition of horse.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of zebras out there.
Yep.
Or mules or other things that have hooves.
Exactly.
So, you know, as an individual, it's kind of our jobs to be able to knock out some of the common possible explanations if we've already gone down that path and proven it wrong. Um, People present differently, people experience things differently. My partner and I, when he got diagnosed, which was actually what inspired me to start the blog itself, we spent a year trying to find out why he shattered his hip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He broke his acetabellum, which is the actual hip joint.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if you say someone broke their hip, they broke the femur, which goes into there. Yeah, no, he broke the joint. Yeah, it was exceptionally unusual because he was under 40 at the time and a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so, first of all, it's unusual to have this kind of fracture, period.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, the people who are most likely to have this fracture are postmenopausal women.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, one of the things that tends to happen with menopause is a decrease in calcium, which increases the risk of bone loss, increases the risk of breakage, and so on. So, like, it was very strange. So we went through, after we went through the whole, like, getting the bone fixed and relearning how to walk stuff, then we had to deal with, well, why did it break in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor helpfully said, okay, he has osteoporosis,
Okay.
which is one of those definitional illnesses. Basically, in the case of osteoporosis, it just means brittle bones. So the bones break easily. Well, gee, he had a weird break because he slipped and his hip landed 3 feet lower. I would say that would, weak bones make sense.
Yeah.
But why does he have weak bones?
Right.
Because obviously he doesn't fit the standard reason for osteoporosis. So what happened? And we had to go through, let's see, he had to see 2 different endocrinologists and besides all the PT stuff, 2 endocrinologists, 2 hematologists, and a got doctor, the word suddenly vanished from my brain, but basically had to eventually have them figure out. The second endocrinologist was the one who really figured it out. She took a look at everything and was like, I think he has pernicious anemia.
Mm.
So pernicious anemia is another one of those not totally useful things where it basically is just low hemoglobin.
Mm. Right.
But you dig in further, and it really is about your body not properly processing vitamin B12.
Okay.
And so we had to go from there. We went to hematologist who was like, okay, we knock out all of these other possibilities. Yes. Okay. then yeah, I think she's right. And it's like, but to confirm it, I need you to have an endoscopy so that we can look for signs of it. Because it turns out autoimmune pernicious anemia occurs when your immune system decides to attack. It's called the intrinsic factor, but that's what connects to vitamin B12 in your stomach and intestines and brings it into your bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
So so it turned out that's what he had. And so for no apparent reason, because that's how autoimmune conditions work, his body suddenly decided it didn't like the intrinsic factor and attacked that particular set of cells so hard that there was pitting in his stomach and intestinal lining where his immune system like effectively dug out that everything that created that.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah.
The body
So
is amazing, yet still astonishing. It's like, okay.
oh yeah. Oh
like,
yeah.
what are we doing?
What? How many ways can it go wrong? Way too many.
Exactly. So
yeah.
So what when it comes to like advocating for yourself, like you start there, start advocating for yourself. What would you say that like one of the main mistakes a patient does when it comes to not advocating for ourselves?
Well, basically assuming the doctor's right. Doctors are human beings. Doctors can make mistakes. That doesn't mean all doctors are automatically wrong, but it does mean that you as the patient has the responsibility of running whatever your doctor says through kind of an internal smell check. Does this actually make sense?
Right.
Does this actually fit my experience? And that may involve going home and doing a lot of research on the condition the doctor says you have, or on the tests the doctor wants you to take.
Right.
But a lot of times people are taught doctors are the experts. Doctors know everything. Don't argue with your doctor. Your doctor obviously knows what's going on better than you do. And as an authority figure, they should be believed and respected and not questioned. Yeah. And it's things like that that have led to about a quarter of hysterectomies that happen in the US are completely unnecessary. And in many cases, they even don't help. So the doctor's just like, well, we could just pull the whole thing out. And too many patients are like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they don't need it.
Yeah. Okay, sure. That's my ability to have children at any point in my life. But yeah, sure, remove that. So there's a lot of people who the doctor tells them something and they go, oh, okay. So I think that in terms of self-advocacy is one of the biggest problems, as well as sticking with doctors who don't listen to you. If you're going to have a relationship with your doctor, you need to have a relationship. There needs to be back and forth. There needs to be communication. Good doctors ask you questions, analyze what you tell them, and take your feelings into account. And also, there's never just one way to do anything. And so it's really important if your doctor's like, oh, well, then we're going to do this and doesn't offer any alternatives, you absolutely have the right to ask about alternative options. Because like the hysterectomy example, usually the doctor is suggesting the most common thing, the easiest thing, or sometimes the thing they think is most likely to be successful. Also, sometimes they're offering the thing that insurance is most likely to cover because things are very broken right now.
Unfortunately, that part.
Right. So, and you know what? I've gone through with doctors on trying things because insurance suggested it. But I'm only willing to do that if they say to me, hey, look, this is really broken, but this is the reality of the situation. There
Mm-hmm.
are these 5 medications. Your insurance is going to insist that you try them in this order.
Right.
I think this other one will be more helpful to you. But if your insurance gets cranky about it, we'll go back and try this other one and proceed from there. But that's why we're doing it that way, or that's our backup plan. If your
Has to make
insurance,
sense. And
right,
so
exactly.
in your book,
Yep.
congratulations, by the way. Um, what will the reader get from this book that can help them in their patient journey?
All right. So the biggest thing is I'm helping them get perspective. I spend the entire first section of the book just going into bias, discrimination, ableism, classism, disability culture, and all of these aspects of living with a disability that people don't tend to really fully process
Mm-hmm.
and don't tend to know about unless they're able to take that step back.
Right.
And that's the foundation for the rest of the book, because all of the work that they have to look at then helps that, well, guess what? Why is this so hard? Because ableism, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
And once you go in there knowing that you're dealing with the ableism, then it's much easier to not blame yourself. Then
Yes.
it's much easier to distance yourself emotionally from it. Right. It's hard because they're dumb and they have a bias.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it hurts so much, because I'm used to the bias and I've accepted the bias. And so I'm agreeing with their assumption that I'm a failure.
Mm.
Okay, but I don't need to do that.
Right.
I know the bias they're coming at me from. And since I know that, I can recognize that and tease apart the pieces so I don't feel bad about them having an issue. Um,
And
exactly.
that is like that. Oh my God, that's a whole nother podcast. Stay focused,
Oh,
child.
yeah.
So
No.
when will
So
it be
there's that.
available? Because oh my God, when will it be available, and how can they get it?
Okay. So it's actually available for pre order now.
Okay.
If you go to barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com and search Allison Hayes Thriving While Disabled, it will pop.
Okay.
It, yeah,
That's so
so it's available
exciting.
for, yeah, I'm so excited. So yeah, so it will pop. It's available for pre-order. The delivery date is April 12th, which is the day before FND Awareness Day. FND being the reason I'm on disability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the book is actually focused more on the combination of finances and disability. So the other really big thing on the patient journey stuff is once you've gotten through that first section, the rest of the book is really talking about the challenges you face as a person with disability and how to get through them. So I talk about healthcare expenses, which, yeah, that's
You saw
huge.
my neck. You saw my neck.
Oh, yeah. So that's huge
Again,
in and of
a whole
itself.
nother because it's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Continue. It's a
Oh, yeah. And then it goes into like all of the different things you need to survive becoming disabled. So, like, I have a chapter on housing, a chapter on transportation, chapters on employment. One chapter is specifically on like trying to protect your job when you become disabled. And I've got another chapter on if you get onto the disability related program, how to think about returning to work.
Mhm.
I've got a whole chapter on that
And we're
application
gonna have to
process.
come. You're gonna have to come back because I want to talk to you about it, about how to protect your job, how to be disabled today.
Yeah.
It was hard before. So
Right.
that again, they focused on it
Yeah. Yeah.
because
So
they need to know this. They need to know it's not over. It
no,
feels over. You want it to be over, but it's not. And there are ways. There are ways, but
there are legal protections, though right now some of those are being challenged.
Mhm.
There are um, legal rights that you have. There are better and worse ways to. There are options about getting accommodations and how to approach that and things like that. So there's a lot of pieces to it.
It's very nuanced because it does, much like diagnosis, it depends on your situation, depends on where you
Mm-hmm.
live, it depends on your resource availability. It depends, but
Right.
they're there.
Absolutely. And the other part is a lot of employers
Mm.
don't understand your rights, don't understand the process, don't know how to approach any of this.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be intensely uncomfortable about the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so like it can be a delicate process,
Mm-hmm.
but the most important thing is for you to know what your rights are so you know what things you might have recourse with. What would be the point where a lawsuit might make sense? What
Mm-hmm.
would be the point where it makes sense to push back? What protects you? And so on. Because I think that's where it feels really sticky and scary because nobody talks about disability stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What rights do I have? What protections do I have? What do I need to do? Is there something I need to do to make them happen?
Right.
So
So
I hit on all of those things.
let us know where they can reach out and find you. Um,
Absolutely.
and we will definitely come back. Go ahead. So tell us what.
Okay. So my blog is Thriving While Disabled, and that's the website www.thrivingwhiledisabled.com. THRIVING WHILEDISABLED.
And I'll have a
And
link in the description. And I'll have a
absolutely.
website as well. So
Yep, and I will have, and I can give you the purchase links
yes, please.
for the books for the book. Yeah, so right now it's available for
Like books,
pre-order.
you're gonna have more. Speak it. Yes, ma'am.
Um, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Book. Yeah, the second book is actually going to be healthcare and healthcare, self care, and welfare somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, the topic of like the central thrust of this is like existing in an ableist world and how
Mm-hmm.
to do it. So yeah, so this book is targeted, specifically focused on like what you need to know to survive with a disability in an ableist world. And I'm viewing the second book as being more of an in-depth navigating the ableism in medical care
Mm-hmm.
and what you can do and think about to protect yourself, be a good self advocate, and keep yourself safe while getting the care you need.
Which is hugely important. Hugely.
Yes.
Okay. What is one piece of advice you'd give someone who hears all this? They're hearing the conversation. They're sticking with us, but they're like, yeah, that's great for them. Clearly, they're stronger than me, or yeah, they have, but they're just and I say because I've been that person. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm sure they have like people and teams and whatnot. But what would you say to the person that is watching or listening to this and they feel as if it can't apply to them? They're lost.
You're who I wrote this book for.
Hmm.
I'm 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 serious. I don't presume any particular knowledge by my readers. And that's why I start it the way I do. I start it with a brief introduction about who I am and where I'm coming from. And I know I come from a privileged background, but I have been primarily supported by SSDI since I was 23. Mm. I was labeled as disabled from the age of 3, though I didn't actually like accept or embrace the term until after I got on disability at 23. And so I lived through a lot of the struggles, though, yeah, I was privileged and I'm using my privilege, the fact that I got the help and I had the support so that other people can do it more easily than I did. So that the people who don't have that, parachute or fallback or the extra money to get to the next month have a better chance of getting the help they need as quickly as possible, have a better chance of getting the support they need more efficiently and more effectively with less brain power being used. I know I'm coming from a place of privilege and I'm trying to use that so that other people don't have to do the mental gymnastics I had to do and instead can go, okay, here's my path. Let me take it.
Exactly.
Because none of this stuff is easy, but there's the hard way. And then there's the like ridiculously impossibly hard way. Right. And I'm trying to at least get you onto the path that makes it a little easier. I'm trying to be the guide to say, oh no, that path is gonna
we're not gonna take the broken bridge. We're gonna take the highway.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And to say, here's why this is broken, and here's how, this is the faster, more effective way. And I don't want you going down the path that's going to hurt you. But once you get through this maze, you have a whole bunch of options in front of you. And I want to support whatever option you choose.
Exactly. I love that. I love it. So thank you so much for coming, for sharing your knowledge, giving part of yourself to us, that you're showing us it's possible. This, me, this is what thriving can look like. This is one piece of it. You may not want to be out there, because trust me, I still don't want to be out there. I want to be behind the scenes, cooking up something, and no one ever knows my name. That's where I want to be. But apparently God had other plans, but it is possible. That's what we're trying to say. So anyway, so thank you. And until next time, guys, we will see you later.